It's Jim from Sprague Woodturning. This week we're going to use some sweet gum pods, some Padauk and Purple Heart. Can't forget that awesome designer epoxy, the vacuum chamber, to make one of the coolest vases I have made in my career. Well, this is something new. These are sweet gum pods, and these come to us from Kelly Lamont, Lamont Woodturning. I will put her details in the description down below so you can check her out. She's got a Facebook site. I've been trying to come up with a creative solution to use these, and it would be too easy to just chuck these into a bucket and throw some resin on top of them. I figured that I would add some wood, and that's what these are. This is Purple Heart and Padauk, and I think the combination of these pieces along with jungle green from designer epoxy and some white ice as well should look really cool. I have taken the time to cut these stems off. Kelly sent along a big box of them, so thanks again, Kelly. I really do appreciate that. I can definitely see why people don't like having these trees around. I can't imagine stepping on one of these in bare feet. You'd be doing the hatless jig for a while, you know what I mean? If you're in the military, you might know what that means. So the other thing too is I used my laser level to lay this all out. The problem is I got some complaints on it. When it's not level, it flashes, and bringing on epilepsy, I guess, is an issue with that. So I did that off camera. And I've cut these kind of the bottom of them to fit the profile of the bucket that we're going to use. All right, let's get these glued in place and we'll go from there. When it comes to installing these wooden pieces, symmetry is important to me. So that's why I thought it was important to really lay these out the way that they are. I alternated them, one Padauk and then one Purple Heart all the way around the bucket. And there may be some people wonder what angle I cut these at, and there's really no point in me telling you that because your bucket may be different from this one. But I think it was at 3 degrees or something like that, gave me the tilt that I needed for them to rest against the outside of the bucket. Once all the pieces went in, then of course I just glued them at the top to make sure that they weren't going to move around once the pods went in, and it was in the vacuum chamber and also in the pressure pot. On the very bottom of this piece, I wanted to make sure that there was basically a bed of pods before I put in that plastic spacer that you see me put in earlier, so that's why it's removed. The pods themselves, there was a lot of debris in them, and I've never dealt with these, so I don't really know what to expect from them. But blowing them out was essential. You could maybe even dump them into a box and kind of rattle them up and then dump them out and then keep doing that until you get them relatively clean. But I never really noticed any loose pieces in the final casting, but I'm sure that there's probably some in there. So trying to keep them clean though, so that you don't have a lot of floaty bits, is pretty important. So make sure you focus on that when you're casting pieces like this. There. Still got a few left over for a future project. All right, let's mix up some resin. We're going to be using a lot of epoxy this week, so deep casting epoxy from Designer Epoxy is what we're going to be using. And we've used the jungle green a couple of times, I believe. There it is there. And, I like to mix my pigments strong. I don't typically like to do a lot of transparent type castings. And the white ice is just there to give it a little bit more pearl effect, if you will. So that's why I use that. And to lighten it up just a little bit. All right, so this is our first 1.5 liters. I don't know what this is going to take. It would take at least 2 of these, I would say for sure. Quite possibly 3. Yeah. All right, well, I'll mix that same amount up and I'll bring it back when I'm ready. Here's another 1.5 liters. Yeah, camera shut off in the middle of this, so I don't know how much of this I got. Well, it looks like it's going to need 1 more. All right, this is the last 1.5 liters, so this will bring it to 4.5 liters. All right, well, that's a lot of resin. Hopefully we don't have any thermal cracking. I'm a little surprised these pods aren't floating. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to put this in the vacuum chamber because there's a ton of voids inside of these little pods. So I want to make sure that those all get filled, and then we'll throw out the pressure pot. Okay, I've moved this so that you can watch this and see the gauge as well, hopefully. I expect this to really foam a lot. I'm hoping that the pods don't float. If they do, then we'll have to cut out some hardboard to fit around there so to keep them contained. But I expect this is going to foam and bubble quite a bit. Yeah, these ones are starting to float. I figured as much. There, now we can't really see anything at all. So I got this vacuum chamber and the vacuum pump came with it off of Amazon, but this has got oil in it, the vacuum pump does, and it just is constantly weeping oil out the top. So I'd like to hear from others that may have the same setup. I will try to get the information for that at the end of this video. But a lot of oil vapor, and I'm always constantly wiping the top of the vacuum pump as well. It seems to work fine. I just find it a little strange that there's so much oil vapor being pushed out of the vacuum pump when it's being in use. So if you've got one, I'd like to hear from you. That's been about 1.5 hours, so I've just been cycling it on and off. Still can't pull a full vacuum. If this was a deeper bucket, then you might be able to do that, but it's still got a fair bit of air coming out of it. But I think that once this goes in the pressure pot, it's going to be good. So what I'm going to do is take the vacuum off here, I'll top up the resin, and then I'll throw it in the pressure pot. Okay, well that has dropped off quite a bit. I've got another 700 milliliters mixed up here. Mixed it up the same intensity. So I'm just going to top this up. I'm sure that this is not enough. Well, it is going to be enough. Okay, wish me luck. If this thermal cracks, it's not the end of the world. I really like filling in those thermal cracks with gold. There's over 5 liters here, so that is well over the manufacturer's recommended depth of pour, but we'll see. We'll know in 72 hours. This is actually 72 hours later. Sorry about no audio. The battery died in my microphone and I didn't realize it. I'm actually very surprised that this didn't crack. When the depth of pour on this was 8.5 inches, and that was done in a single pour. So, you know, hats off again to Designer Epoxy. I was really hoping to actually reuse that plastic piece, but it just, if I had to sprayed some mold release on it, like I never do, but if I had to sprayed some mold release on it, it's probably would have came out a lot easier. As far as removing it from the bucket was concerned, it really wasn't that big of a fight, to be honest with you. I've certainly had much worse, as as people probably know. I did want to take the glue off the very top where I had glued the pieces of wood, because that was going to probably hamper the casting from coming out. Anyway, as soon as I got a couple blocks of wood and set it up there and gave her the hammer a few times, out she come quite easily. Split my bucket in the meantime though, so I'm going to have to get one of them. Once I located the center on the bottom, I decided to take it over to the belt sander here, but it was taking forever to grind. That, you know, those exotic woods are usually quite hard, so I eventually took it back over after cleaning off the belt. I mean, those belt cleaners really do an amazing job. Anyway, use the cuts all sander here to grind down the majority of the wood. And then once I've got that ground down, I went back over to the drum sander or belt sander, sorry, and then finished grinding them down. I didn't see the need to grind it completely flat, but it was good enough surface that I was able to glue on another piece of wood. That way we can use the tailstock and mount it between centers. Starting off with the Hercules from Hunter Tool Systems. This is the larger number 3 or the 5/8 diameter one. Been some comments about negative rake scrapers and why I'm not using them. And essentially, even though this has a cupped cutter on it, the front of the tool is tipped downwards. So that puts it in a negative rake position, just so that everybody's clear with that. Negative rake is absolutely preferred for turning resin, that's for sure. Once I had it rounded, I was able to bump it up to 1,000, which kind of really surprised me because there's a fair bit of weight here, and I forgot to measure the weight on this. I know that I wanted to do that with every video, but man, it's just a matter of remembering to do so, which I'm sure some of you can appreciate. As you see in the previous clip, we are finally getting some rain, some desperately needed rain. The forest fires this year have been out of control, and I'm actually surprised to hear from a number of people, even somebody I believe in Italy said it was on the news there. So wow, it's making international news, that's for sure. The forest fires that were around where we live here is they're all under control now. The rain has certainly helped with that. We are very close to Canadian Forces Base Petawawa, and the ranges are literally across the river from where we live. And it's concerning when they're firing artillery, or when soldiers are on the range. I know I've been there. I don't know how many fires that we've started over the years doing training. Some years you're putting out more fires than you were doing training. So, and actually my wife, when she was in high school, they almost lost their house to a fire that was caused by the military firing artillery, I believe, in the training area near Gagetown, New Brunswick. And as far as the air quality is concerned, I haven't really smelled any smoke now for probably a week. So that certainly has been welcomed. And I'd like to send out a special shout out to the forest firefighters that are here fighting these forest fires from all over the world. It's very cool to see people come and help us put out these fires. So thanks to them for what they do for us here. I really do appreciate it, along with millions of other Canadians. So this piece, I'm not going to put a glue block on the bottom of it. I've got that piece of hardboard in the very bottom, that MDF, and I'm going to actually incorporate that and use it as a tenon. That's a little stronger than just the resin, but the resin is on the other side of it. So when I'm doing any shaping of this piece, when it's unsupported, I'm taking very light cuts, that's for sure. So once this is mounted in the chuck, we can be a little bit more aggressive with this, still using tailstock support. The amount of weight that's overhanging off of the chuck here could easily break that tenon off. So whenever you see it unsupported, which is not going to be very often, I'm taking very light cuts with it. So as far as profile is concerned, I decided to go with a total different profile this week. I think that I did a bowl very similar to this with deep coves in it. My wife is like, you always kind of stick to one profile, and I'm like, well, yeah, I like classic shapes. I try to vary things on the hollow forms and on the vases that I do. So this is certainly different from the norm, that's for sure. I wanted to make sure that the base was a lot smaller than the top of the vase. So I decided to work in that area first, whittle that down. I maybe could have gone a little bit smaller in the foot area, but overall I'm really happy with this piece. That is the Phoenix, if you're curious, and that's a great little tool for getting in and working in those deep coves. The Hercules, the smaller Hercules actually will do a good job of this as well, but I really like the Phoenix where it's got that fine, thin point. Just allows you to get in there and work on those coves and not have to worry about if the bevel's running, because it's a small cutter. So since it's a smaller cutter, it tends to be less grabby. So that's another good thing about using it. So the number 3 Hercules and the Phoenix, the largest Phoenix, are the two main tools that I like to use when I'm doing resin turning. But I've got a number of hunter tools, and so far I'm happy with pretty much all of them, that's for sure. Another reason for the profile that I went with this week is I needed to get down inside to where the pods were. If I had just left a classic vase shape, then you would have seen not a lot of pod reveal at the very top of the vase, and there would have been more as you went closer to the base. So by putting in these really deep coves, you're going to expose more of the pods. I mean, really, that's what this video is about. It's about those sweet gum pods. The exotic wood that's in there, that's the bling. But by going deep into these coves like that, you're going to expose more of those pods. I don't know if the tree typically produces one size pod, but if you had a variety of sizes, then there wouldn't be any dead areas in the casting. But these are awesome. I love them. Well, what do you think? It's different from what we usually have done, that is for sure. These straight lines mimic the straight lines in the piece. I don't know. Anyway, I got a late start today, so that's the end of the day. I'll think on it tonight, but I might try and dish this out a little further, give it some more profile. I don't know. Tell me in the comments what you think at this stage, anyway. See you tomorrow. So this is the next day, and before we can do any hollowing in this piece, we need to get rid of this waste block. I initially started to part the waste block off without the tailstock in place, and I said, no, that's probably not a good idea, even though the piece is being supported by the steady rest. I just brought up the tailstock and just put very light pressure on it, and then that way when it does come free, hopefully it doesn't fly off and hit you in the face, because nobody wants that. I figured that we would use the one-way captive hollowing system in order to take the inside of the vase out. If you haven't seen this before, this is a laser, And right now I've got it set at about 1.125. You can see it on my finger there. We'll close that up as we go. And of course that just helps you not go through the side of your project. We do have to take about 1 inch out of the very base of here, but pretty much just straight in. I'm not going to mimic these curves on the inside. And the hollowing rig shouldn't be hitting on the steady rest either, because we're just going straight in and out. All right, let's get her done. If you're wondering, I certainly could have taken the inside of this vase out by hand. But again, for the people that are not aware of it, I am left-handed, and I do find it awkward to work over the lathe bed like normal right-handed wood turners will do. So this here is a really good option for me and other left-handed people. The inside of this went fairly smooth. I stuck with the straight boring bar. I think I sharpened the teardrop cutter twice. The other good thing about having a large opening like this is that eventually I'll be able to move the tool rest inside of the vase as well. That way you're getting better support, and the boring bar doesn't tend to vibrate as much when it gets deep inside the casting. The only real concern that I've noticed with the teardrop cutter that comes with this system is that if you do expose too much of an edge to the side of your project, then you can get, I'll call it a catch, pretty serious catch, especially if the piece isn't trued up yet. So I noticed that earlier on, and then I moved the teardrop cutter so the point was more to the left, and then that way you're not exposing as much of the cutting edge to the wood. Too much cutting edge and you could be in a world of hurt. You could break something like this apart. So keep an eye out for that if you decide to use a teardrop cutter with this system, or any other system as far as that's concerned. So I noticed that there's some rubber on there, and it looks like my wheels are breaking down. I think maybe I've got too much pressure on them. Anyway, they're just disintegrating, so I've got some other wheels here, so that shouldn't be that big of a problem. Yeah, I must have it too tight, so I guess you got to be careful not to put these down too tight, or else they'll definitely get destroyed. Ones on the other side still seem to be okay, I think. I'll have a look at them too, but anyway, I'll be back in a minute. So I've got the new wheels on there. Well, the new to me wheels. These are actually out of an inline skate, and it's kind of funny because last week somebody mentioned how often you change your wheels, and I'm like, well, I never have, never needed to, because it doesn't see a ton of use. But there's a number of issues with some of these wheels. This one's probably the nicest of them. This one, of course, all delaminated. And I believe that's where the rubber was coming from. This one here, like it's all like coming off of the bead, if you will, and kind of squashed out here on one side. So yeah, no wonder I was having issues. So anyway, I'll keep an eye on it. I guess I got to look out for new wheels. And if anybody has a suggestion on good wheels, I'll take it. So some quieter wheels would definitely be a bonus. It's actually surprising how loud they are. And again, I think last week I left it at 20% volume, and that's what that is too. It's only at 20%, so it's quite loud. Anyway, these ones did the trick. I did see that there's some play in them, so they're definitely going to have to be replaced here in the relatively near future. All I did was during spring cleanup years ago, I went around and and looked in the trash and found some inline skates. Our two kids, or two boys, had some inline skates, so I grabbed some of the wheels off of those, but they were wore down. A lot of them were wore down pretty bad, so I just happened to be driving by and noticed that there were some inline skates in the trash, and I'm like, hey, I know what I could use them for. So that's a cheap place for wheels for those that want to make their own steady rest like this. But if I can get a line on some quieter ones, I certainly think that I'll buy them and put them on. And there is some play in these bearings on these wheels too, so it's I don't know. Hard to say how long it's going to last, so I should get some new ones ordered. As I've said in the past, that it's important to wear some sort of respirator while turning, and you may have noticed that I'm wearing the power cap while I'm working on this piece. I know that there's some people want me to do a review on this, and that will be coming. I'll probably just briefly talk about it in one of the upcoming videos. But I need to use it more before I can give you a firm opinion on what I think of it. Early indications are that it's good. There's some things that I would like to see improved on it, but for the most part, I'm pretty happy with the purchase. Price was a little up there, though. I'm going to be honest. Well, there's a look inside. Things are cut very cleanly. I'm quite happy with that. I think I will do a resin finish on the inside. I don't know, I might do it on the outside too. We'll have to see. I'm a little undecided on keeping this or not. You've got, again, straight lines, so it kind of goes with the outside of the piece. But there's a big part of me that's saying round this off and go inside the vase. I don't know. I don't know. I might just leave it the way it is. I need to do some thinking on it. Do have some filling to do, so weed out the UV epoxy and do that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I'm gonna leave it. I'm not gonna mess with it. I'm gonna leave it. All right, sanding the inside next. Since I'm going to do a resin finish on the inside of this, there's no reason to sand this any higher than 320. You could probably get away with 220. I decided to go to 320 on this piece, though. The difference between doing a resin finish over wood and doing a resin finish over resin is that if there's sanding scratches in the resin, when you put when you put the epoxy on top of that, it's going to fill in all those little scratches and you're not going to see them. However, when you do that on top of wood, you're going to see them. So it's best to get rid of any sanding scratches that you can prior to doing any resin finishes. Now, as far as sanding with the drill, I was having issues getting things nice and flat on the inside. So that's why I switched to the sanding block. And then once everything was sanded flat, then I was able to go back and power sand, because power sanding will always give you a better surface than using your hands like I am there. Yeah, there I am finishing off with the power sanding. All right, as we listen to the rain come down outside, we're going to use some UV resin. This is from Designer Epoxy. And very few holes in this piece, surprisingly. I was really worried that there was going to be a ton of holes, but just up near the top here where the resin had mosquitoes had disappeared. So it left a few little holes behind. So I'll fill those with the UV epoxy, trim it up, and then we'll get right back to sanding the outside. There, I'll just use this for about 3.5 minutes or so and do the other spots, and then we'll get back to sanding. So I just want to take a final pass on the vase, and of course it's pretty hard to do that with a steady rest in the way, so it had to go. So yeah, very, very light cuts here, and I was holding my breath the whole time, especially out near the rim. As you get closer to the base, it's certainly not an issue, but out near the rim is like, man, if I get a catch here, this could be all for naught. So if you're in the same situation as that, make sure you just take very light cuts, and it should be fine. So after trimming, I'm quite happy with the surface, so we'll be able to move on with sanding. There were a couple of spots that needed to be filled after, I think I sanded to 180 and had to look at things that I need to fill a couple of areas. The resin on the inside was done because there were some small little voids in there, and I figured that it was just easier to just throw some, I actually used some Pro Series on the inside of this piece, and I'll explain a little bit why I use that over the art cast. But very happy with the finish on this piece. There's a couple of spots that need to be done on the outside. I think having the addition of UV resin in my inventory is one of the big pluses. You can just move on with your project so fast. You can fill in large holes, and you don't have to worry about foaming. So once everything was sanded to 800, this is the Triple E buffing compound from the Be All buffing system. And then once we're done with that, we'll clean it up with some denatured alcohol and get our first coat of finish on. All right, exciting times. This is the first coat of Waterlux Gloss. Well, there you go. What do you think of that? We'll do the resin finish later. Those pods are really cool. I'm not sure if I'll do the resin coat today, maybe tomorrow. It's pretty late, it's been a long day. Anyway, yeah, we'll probably see you tomorrow. So this is the next day, and we're using the Pro Series. It's something like 7:30 in the morning. The reason why I want to use a Pro Series is because between 8 to 12 hours after mixing, it's dry to the touch. So if you get out there early enough in the morning, you can do a resin coat on the inside, and then it would be set up good enough that you can then put finish on the outside of the piece. So that's the great thing about it. The Pro Series is mainly used for countertops and floors. It's very durable. But it is a little cloudy, so it's best to mix it with colors when you're using it. But 1/8 of an inch or less, it's clear. All right, well, it is 9 hours after I poured the resin this morning, and it's dry to the touch. I definitely wouldn't stick my fingernail in it, but you know, it looks pretty darn good. All right, let's get the second coat on. You may have noticed in the previous clip that I set the epoxy in a tub of water, and that's warm water, and that was just to make sure that it's nice and thin so it flows well. So before the next coat goes on, we're going to use the triple E buffing compound again, and then once that's done, we'll clean it off with denatured alcohol, and we'll be able to move on with the next coat finish. Okay, this is the second coat of Waterlux Gloss. This time around, when I cleaned it with the denatured alcohol, there was hardly any residue come off of the vase, unlike the first coat that was put on. Big difference. Well, there you go. I think that that's all it's going to need. I don't think it's going to need any more than that. Yeah, I'm really grooving this piece, man. It is nice. Beautiful resin. Sweet gum pods are pretty awesome too. All right, we'll see you tomorrow when we're doing the bottom. So this is the next day, and I decided to try my vacuum chuck here. Pinching it between centers might have been a safer way to do it, but giving it a pretty good slap to see what's going to take place. If you're curious, I think this is the 8-inch drum I've got on here, and this is all from oneway.ca. You can get their entire system there. I decided to just use the bowl gouge to get rid of the MDF, and then I switched back to the Hercules. Very light cuts here. It seemed to take forever to get rid of the excess resin on the very bottom of the vase here, and that's just because I was really erring on the side of caution and just taking very light cuts. Once I'm done with the tooling here, it's sanded from 60 to 400. I didn't want to go any higher on that because there was a lot of details that had to go on the bottom of this, and I find, you know, really 600 is about the max. If you go any higher than that, the surface is quite hard to write on. And for those who are curious, I'm using a Pilot V5 black pen. That's what I use to write on the bottom of the pieces that I make. All right, let's have a last little chat about this beautiful vase. It is certainly one of the best I've ever done. All right, so before we get started, what do you think about my new hat? I got this from the Royal Canadian Legion, Birth of a Nation on the side of it. And of course, this is Vimy Ridge. If you're curious and you want to look it up, it's pretty cool to see what we did there in the First World War. Anyway, this is a beautiful vase. I got some dimensions for you. It is actually 6 pounds, 2 ounces, and that's 2.7 kilograms. I gotta look this up, I got it written down. It is 8.5 inches across and 8 inches tall, and that's 21.6 centimeters across and 20.3 centimeters tall. And it varies throughout the piece, but 5/8 to 3/4 is the thickness, and that is 16 millimeters in thickness. So it's a beefy turning. I love the weight of this piece. I really think that to showcase those pods, that was the direction to go with this, indenting it, that would give you a fuller range of the piece. Again, it's so shiny. Just 2 coats of the Waterlux, and the Purple Heart and the Padauk, I think, really kind of add to it as well. There's the inside of it. I know that I didn't really show it all that much after it was done, but it's actually very nice for 1 coat. That Pro Series is actually really good for this. Need to use it more often, actually. Now it's a little hard to see because the bottom is really busy, but you might be able to pick it up if I can get the shine right. Very tough to see though. But it looks good, except for where the wood pieces come in. It needs to be redone, so another coat, and then it will be ready to go to its new home. And this piece is for sale. If you're interested in it, let me know. spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, and I will disclose the price there. I've been debating on trying to put things maybe on an eBay auction. I know that there was last week's piece. It was very popular. A lot of people wanted it, so let me know what you think about that. I would have to put a reserve on it, but eBay auction might be the way to go, and then that way everybody's got a chance to get something if they want it. But I really love this piece, and those coves really kind of set the straight pieces of the Padauk and the purple are off, I think. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Don't forget to put designer epoxy in the comments down below to be entered into the 3-gallon giveaway kit at 100,000 when we get there. We are finally over 95,000, so the giveaway for my project will be next week, so please come on back for that. And of course, the epoxy giveaway is only for Canada and the lower 48 US states. I've started working on next week's project already, and as per normal, there's some bumps in the road. So it seems to be the norm around here. Mind you, this one here is pretty smooth, so I can't complain about that. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about this week's video, and of course, that's where we're going to get the next winner from the comments. Every 5,000 subscribers, I give away a project of some sort, so please leave a comment down below. And let me know about the eBay auction if you think that is something that we should do. All right, take care, stay safe, don't forget the bell. Please share my videos with your friends, and we'll see you next week.